That last line doesn't sound very promising, does it? And that's the point of it. Where the body is, the vultures gather, because that is the sign of the fact that we always need to be prepared. We always need to know who God is and live God in our lives. The first line of today's first reading reminds me of a story about a man. He didn't believe in God. He was an atheist. And he decided to bring a suit to court that stated that atheists didn't have a holiday, that Christians had Christmas, Muslims have their Eid, the Jewish people have Rosh Hashanah, the Yom Kippur, but atheists didn't have a holiday. And so the judge, finally, when he was given the opportunity, after all of the lawyers made their arguments, he said, well, clearly, if you knew Scripture, you would know that you have a holiday. And he read this first line, Wisdom, chapter 13, verse 1. All men were by nature foolish or in ignorance of God. He said, April 1st is your holiday, April Fool's Day, because anyone who doesn't believe in God is a fool. Anyone who is in ignorance of God or doesn't believe in God is in big trouble. Unfortunately, they don't realize it, but we do, because we believe in God. And yet, we live in ignorance of God oftentimes throughout our daily lives because we put things first. We put other things of the world before God. Oftentimes, people will, especially in Facebook, post pictures of beautiful sunsets and say, oh, today was a beautiful sunset. And they don't acknowledge where the origin of that sunset is, because the sun and the moon and the stars and the clouds are all beautiful things, but where do they come from? The people that are around us are beautiful, and who is their creator, their origin. There was a book, they're probably still published them, Letters to God from Children. And there was one letter from a little girl, and it said, God, I never knew that orange and purple could go together until I saw last night's sunset. Thank you. It's this majestic things sometimes that remind us. But even the little things have to remind us of God. The small things that happen in our lives that we need to put in place and understand that their origin is the Lord Himself. Today's gospel is a difficult gospel. When I was looking over the readings for today, and I said, how did I end up with this Mass? But they're warnings to us, important warnings of how we live our life. We hear oftentimes, you hear, all you have to do is turn on the TV Sunday morning, which I don't have that luxury of doing, but when I did, you'd hear the evangelists, and you still hear people asking, Father, is it true that the world is going to end next year? Or when the year was changing, when centuries were changing, it was coming the year 2000. Is the world going to end? And it's easy to see how people can have that misunderstanding. The world is going to end, certainly. But even when Jesus was on earth, He said, the only one that knows is the Father. Even Jesus didn't know when the world was going to end in His manifestation in the world. Certainly, why should we worry about when the world is going to end? It may be cataclysmic. Certainly the people of Pompeii, when the Mount Vesuvius was erupting, thought it was the end of the world. And now tourists go to Pompeii to see their remains. And so the world didn't end for the rest of us, but it did for many of them. Anytime there's a natural disaster, anytime that there are issues with nature, we look and say, oh, these are signs of the end. And certainly on Christmas Day a few years ago, when the tsunami destroyed many villages and places and killed many people, it was the end for them. And so what we need to worry about is never being ignorant of God and living God always, every day in our lives, so that we will always be prepared for our end. Because I can't tell you when the world is going to end, but with some certainty I can probably tell you that you're going to be gone before the world ends. I'm going to be gone before the world ends. And so I need to prepare for the moment when my life ends here on earth, so that I know it will continue because of my baptism, because of my faith, because of God's goodness, because of God's love and his forgiveness. Because of that, I know that my life will not end, and the world will not end in God, because God is creator. God brings about good things. And so even in death, he brings about his glory in our lives. Pope Francis said, "Ninguém morre na véspera." No one dies before their time. And so we wait, but we live with our faith in God, knowing that we will always, if we live faithfully, be drawn to him in every moment of our lives and even beyond.